staff who give of themselves every single day to make sure that business gets taken care of and residents are taken care of. And thank you for the people in this town because they are loving and caring and they look out for each other. And so we just want to say thank you, God, for your mercy and your grace. Ask that you bless this meeting in the name of Jesus. Amen. All right. Thank you for that. Okay. It is 5:59. So give it 1 second. Clocks are all messed up everywhere. Okay, call this meeting to order at 6 o'clock. Ms. Scanlon, may I have the roll call, please?
Yes, Councilmember Joyner.
Here.
Councilmember Carlskent.
Here.
Councilmember Lauritsen.
Here.
Councilmember Silhai. And Mayor Andriotta.
I am here, thank you. So item number 3, report from closed session. Ms. Mollenkopf.
Thank you, Mayor. Yes, staff received direction, but there is no reportable action.
Great, thank you. And tonight, Mr. Mike Lucan from the PCTPA is so graciously agreed to do the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you, Mike. Appreciate that. All right. Item number 5, agenda modification. Do we have any agenda modifications from anybody other than what we're going to do here in a second? Yes.
Something to be pulled.
I think it was going to be pulled anyway, but Mayor, staff would like to have Aiken Park pulled.
Yeah, I have that when we talk about consent, so thank you. I got that circled. Anybody else? Okay. All right. Item number 6, presentations. I believe we have 2 presentations tonight. The first one is an update on the South County Transportation Sales Tax Measure, the need, status, and outreach plan for potential 2024 South County Transportation Sales Tax Measure, and how it could impact the city of Lincoln, and discussion of other approaches of funding transportation infrastructure and in Lincoln. And so Mike Lucan, the Executive Director of PCTPA, will be giving this presentation. Welcome, Mike. It's really great to see you, as always.
Thank you. Good evening, Madam Mayor and members of the Lincoln City Council. Thank you for having me here this evening. I just have to say, I knew it was my favorite place to come because I get to do the flag salute. In my prior career, I worked for one city for 15 years and I never got to do the flag salute. So thank you. Anyway, very quickly wanted to just give an update to the council tonight about where we're at with our transportation sales tax measure and where we go from here, and answer any questions that you might have. I know you know who we are as the council, but just for the audience, PCTPA is a special district. We're not the city, we're not the county, but we're a special district created about 35 years ago, essentially with the job to protect the funding assets of for transportation for the county as a whole, including the cities and the county, to go out and find more and fund more projects for transportation, and then to guide our transportation planning at a county level here, as opposed to in other areas of the regional area where this is done by SACOG, our partner agency, the Sacramento Area Council of Governments. We decided a long time ago that it was better if we kept it here local so we could decide where our dollars go, where our roads go, and that we don't have to compete against funding for a number of our funding pots with other jurisdictions like Davis or West Sacramento. We can control our own destiny, essentially. So we have a tremendous amount of challenges with providing transportation funding. Not only are we, as you know, a very, very fast pro-growth community, we need all different forms of transportation. A majority of our focus is on roads, but we also need public transit that's appropriate for a suburban location. And we need alternative modes or bike ped as well. So we need all different modes. We're not just all about putting people in cars. We're about improving the economy. We're about providing more housing by providing more roads and providing alternative modes. It's become increasingly difficult to do this in the state of California. And of recent, the state has adopted a little thing called CAPTI, or the Climate Action Plan for Transportation Infrastructure, which essentially puts very stringent requirements on any project that expands our roadways or increases VMT. And of course, they've said there's no phase out period. We just have to immediately embrace and adopt this policy. That makes it very difficult for an entity like Placer to continue to grow, to continue to provide housing, to grow our economy, and at the same time grow our roads. So we have to get really innovative. So you're going to see a lot of innovation in the coming years to try to make our projects palatable so it complies with this policy. But we have to be very careful because we have to, in our redesign of that infrastructure, we can't exceed the costs or expectations of our constituents. And so, I add a point at the end of this slide that says, well, redesign infrastructure, but at what cost? And we always have to keep that in mind, that we're protecting the citizens' dollars, and we can only go so far to comply with what the state is trying to do, at least at this point in time. So, So we have a problem in Placer County, especially in South Placer. We have a strategic deficit in transportation funding. We need $3 billion over the next 30 to 40 years to fund transportation to get between our cities and also to get within our cities. And so this price tag is a very steep one. We have two ways to fund that. One is through growing. And so luckily $2 billion of that $3 billion is funded through growth by our private sector builders. But the remaining $1 billion or $1.2 billion to be exact can only come through our own efforts and our own devices, because although you can charge a developer the maximum amount possible for mitigating their own growth, you can't ask them to pay for things that they don't create. So that's why you are left with this deficit. And so in the old days, we used to say, well, we will use our impact fees that we charge builders to do this. And when we had this formula of 90-10, we'd come up with 10% of the cost, and the state or federal government would come up with 90%. Dates back all the way to the Eisenhower administration. We were able to do that. And we built our communities, we designed our general plans based upon that formula. Well, about 15 years ago, the problem is not that the formula changed, but that the competition, the reality of when you apply for these funds, because the competition is so fierce, the expectation is that you match dollar for dollar local funding with that state and federal funding. So if you have a $25 million project, you have to come up with $12.5 million, and then you might be able to get $12.5 million from the state or federal government for that roadway or transit bus or whatever it be. So our job is now much more difficult. How do we come up with this gap? And we don't have a good solution for that. And the state only gives us two ways to fill that gap. One is a parcel tax, and one is a sales tax. Our board of directors, of which Councilman Joyner is on, essentially said, well, a parcel tax is not fair because that would just make the property owners within Placer County pay. But we have about 25% of the folks that come or traffic generated in our county is generated from people that either pass through our county or who are employed in our county and live somewhere else or enjoy other things within our county. So they should have to pay that freight too. And so our board asked us to look only at a sales tax measure. And that's what we've been doing for the last about 8 years. So the next question is obviously, well, what about that thing called the gas tax? Wasn't that supposed to pay for everything? Well, unfortunately, no. It was designed only to pay for what we have already. So it repairs our public transit buses that we drive 1 million miles before we replace them. It fixes pedestrian safety. It allows us to repair our potholes and our roads, repair our roads and bridges. And a tiny amount of money is left over for what's called local congestion management, but that's only around our seaports in the state of California where the most severe congestion occurs. It can't be used for what we want to do, which is improving the interchange at 80 and 65, widening 65, and other important projects. So we've been out, like I said, for the past 8 years, but most recently, up until April of 2022, trying to educate the public on the need for this measure and that there really is no other solution available to us, and gauge the support for that. You know, is there support for moving forward with a half-cent sales tax measure? And so we've been out in your community. We've been out all over the place with videos, with talking to people, with a kiosk, excuse me, a kiosk at the Galleria, and a lot of other methods, social media, videos, you name it, to try to educate the public on this issue. We've been doing a ton of community meetings. We had one right here in Lincoln in the upper right photo at Oliver's, where we had a lot of people come and learn about transportation infrastructure. And so we had a lot of folks come out and learn about what the need is, and with the hope to spread the word about this. So then what we do is we then go to the potential voters. We do a formal poll using our firm FM3 Research, who we've used for the past 8 years. They're very, very accurate. And we say, well, you know, is there support of this? So we've done all this research. I mean, we've done all this outreach, and now we do this research to see, well, is it effective? And first thing we do is we basically take a look at what are all the other issues going on right now, because if our issue is not at top of mind, traffic congestion, typically there isn't support for that. So what happened is that we were in the top 3, but there's a lot of stuff going on right now. And you can see at the top of the list: inflation, gas prices, the conflict in the Ukraine, cost of housing, and traffic congestion dropped, you know, all the way to the 8th or 9th thing that's on at top of mind for people. Well, I would say although it dropped, we have found that there is support for this, and we actually got to the 2/3 necessary to put this on the ballot. But the problem is it's a soft 2/3. So because we dropped in terms of whether it's at the top of people's minds, and then we test this with simulating an election by listening to and providing positive comments and negative comments. And we're on the edge, but we're just not quite there. So our board of directors said, yeah, no, we can't afford to put this on the ballot and lose. And so let's wait until 2024. And the other main reason we did that is because people are not back to full employment yet, or they're not even back in a hybrid employment situation. And so until that happens, this is not going to be at the top of people's mind. And so hopefully, you know, this summer, we thought it was going to be beginning of the summer. It looks like more end of summer. You're going to see a lot of employers going back. Of course, hopefully we don't have another variant that causes that to be delayed, but you'll see a lot of people going back. And right now we're at about 117% of pre-pandemic traffic volume. It's expected if we do go back to work, even in a hybrid situation, 2 or 3 days a week, it's going to get pretty darn bad on Highway 65 and Interstate 80. And this will become at top of people's mind, and we will be able to, our hope is to be able to put something on the ballot in 2024 and have the public consider this important funding source for transportation. And as you can see, we're kind of headed in the right direction. We were kind of we had a lot of support back in 2017. We then dropped through the pandemic, but the upward trend right now is towards, you know, the 2/3 needed. But I think, you know, we need to get, you know, significantly above that. You know, had we been in a situation where we had a soft 72%, maybe we would have put it on the ballot. But when you're right on the edge there, it's not, staff could not recommend, and our board would not support going forward at this time. So again, what are the projects that we're pursuing? The interchange at 8065, that $500 million project to remove the clover leaf and replace it with a flyover bridge. Here's the artist rendition, which you've seen before. Widen Highway 65, the full build out condition is 8 lanes to Blue Oaks from 80, and then 6 lanes all the way up to the city of Lincoln. This is the first phase of the project, the most significant backup right now, which we all experience every day, which is between Blue Oaks and the Galleria. And that project is designed, permitted, everything is set in place and ready to go. The minute we have dollars for the project, we can match that with state and federal funding and get the project going. Baseline and Riego Road, that's another important project for the county. As a whole, it's an alternative to Interstate 80. We're going to be taking that project and going from its 2 lanes to a 4-lane configuration, and then eventually someday to 6 lanes. Placer Parkway, way back when we started this discussion in the early 2000s, we ran our traffic model and we said, well, if we widen Interstate 80 and we widen Highway 65, can we get all this traffic through there? And the answer was no. And so we had to add a new highway, a limited access expressway from the Whitney Ranch interchange in Rockland all the way over to Highway 99. And one of the things that's often asked is, well, are people really actually going this way? How can you do this traffic model? Are you just guessing at where people are going? Well, in the old days, it wasn't guessing, it was license plate surveys and the like, but now we utilize what's called streetlight data or cell phone data. So we track yourself. We don't track you individually or individuals, but we are able to get data for people that are using their cell phones on the trips or pinging the towers. And definitely people are going from Lincoln, utilizing Baseline Road and going over to Highway 99. There's no question that occurs now, where it's in the past, we kind of had to make a guesstimate of whether that's occurring. So things like Placer Parkway, no, are they needed today? No, but in the future, at full build out condition, absolutely they're needed. We have a lot of local roadway projects. Of course, some right here in Lincoln, widening to Ferrari Ranch Road. Other parts of the county, we need things to get on and off this regional roadway system, Rockland Road interchange, Blue Oaks widening, and other very, very important improvements. Again, we're not just about roads. We need a lot of dollars. And in our expenditure plan, there's about $80 million set aside for bicycle and pedestrian uses. These are some examples of our local bicycle network. We need part of our regional bicycle system. We're trying to design our version of the American River Parkway, which will go from Folsom Lake to Granite Bay to Roseville, and then out into the county to the west, and eventually into the Sacramento County Trail System, and then down to Discovery Park in downtown Sacramento. So we are working very hard at this, and in Roseville, we've designed the first and built the first part of that system. We're also trying to connect the rest of the county. So that's just one trail, the Dry Creek Greenway, but we're trying to connect Lincoln to Rockland better. We're trying to connect Auburn to the southern part of the county better. We're trying to connect, even Rockland and Roseville don't connect very well, and we're trying to change that so that someone can take a bicycle, to or can walk to somewhere instead of using their car, or simply just use it for recreation. And then the last part of it is transit. As you know, we have 3 transit operators, PCT or Placer County Transit Services Lincoln, and then Roseville Transit Services Roseville, and Auburn Transit Services Auburn. Very difficult to do transit in this county. And so in our expenditure plan, we really only have things that are proven. So we have funding for our commuter buses. They are prior to the pandemic, full to the brim. We, as we go back to work, we're starting to see an uptick in our commuter bus. We're not there yet, but our commuter bus use, and we forecast we will need these continuing into the future. We are going to try something new in Placer County. So the local transit service, that's kind of where the problem is with transit. You probably see lots of buses driving around Lincoln and other communities that are most of the time half empty. That's because they go on these large circuitous routes that take you hours and hours to get there. And most people would rather take a car and get there, in 10 minutes versus an hour. And so we're going to try something new, very similar to Lyft and Uber, which is called microtransit, which is a smaller vehicle. And we're going to be doing a pilot project with PCT and Roseville Transit and Auburn Transit, hopefully this fall, to try to see if this is an alternative we think might have some might work well in a suburban community like Placer County. It's worked well in Rancho Cordova, in Citrus Heights. They went from 2 buses to 12 buses. There was such a high demand, and in other parts of the community. So we're going to try this on a pilot basis to see if it's something that deserves additional funding in the future. And then lastly, real quick, we're going to expand our intercity rail system, taking the Capital Corridor, which is the most successful intercity rail system in the entire United States prior to the pandemic, and expanding that from 1 trip a day, 1 train a day round trip to three daily round trips, and then eventually to 10 daily round trips. Why this is significant is because it changes it from a super commuter / tourist route to a real commuter service. And we're working very hard right now to build what's called the Third Track Project, which will get us additional service. And why is that important to Lincoln? Because our bus system eventually will connect to this. And so you'll be able to take a bus from Lincoln, an express bus, to get to the Roseville rail station, get on that and go to wherever you want to go in Northern California, because it doesn't make sense to build short haul rail things. It would never pan out, for example, to build a rail system to Lincoln. And then the last thing we're doing is for the very, very extreme future is we're looking at the feasibility of expanding that Capital Corridor service actually all the way up to the Tahoe and Truckee Tahoe and Reno Sparks area. So what are we doing moving forward? For 2024, we're going to be doing a lot of the same, but we're going to be focusing in on things that we have proven that works, and they really touch the general public as opposed to the business public. We found that the business public typically agrees with our message and is convinced that we need to have this. The general public, they just don't have that information. So we're focusing more on the general public. We're actually going to be doing these community meetings that we've been doing. We've been kind of doing them in kind of pulses throughout the year. We're going to convert that to where we're going to be doing 36 community meetings every single year in the community. So we're going to be touching multiple parts of Lincoln, each quarter, and talking to them about transportation, for example. And then we're going to continue our push in social media, streaming media, the Galleria, testimonials from different folks, and also other innovative things like Rocket TV and working with your parks department to host the movies in the park and that kind of thing. With that, I'll conclude my presentation. Be happy to answer any questions that you have.
All right, thank you, Mike. I really appreciate that. Your presentations are always so informative and thorough, and you guys do a lot of great work. All right, any questions from the council? Questions, comments? Go ahead. No? Should we save you for last?
Yeah.
Okay, questions or comments on this side? Okay, all right, go ahead.
So Mike, just a thought. When we talk about a regional bike trail system, it's expensive. To many, it might seem like an amenity, not a transportation system. Maybe you want to talk about how we're required to package these projects now coming forward.
Sure. And the pandemic, one of the good things about it is that it did reinforce that there is support for using this. Maybe it's not the greatest commute service, but in Placer County, but it is definitely something that people want to utilize for recreation and exercise and healthy communities. But you hit the nail right on the head with this. I said earlier, we have to be creative. And so when we build our roadways, we need to pair those projects with public transit, with bike ped, with other innovative things. We're looking at a large electric vehicle recharging facility, for example, at the interchange, as a way to convince the state of California that project is addressing climate change. And so yes, for that purpose, bike trails are very, very important. And I think that there is support. I mean, at every one of the meetings we had throughout the county earlier last year that we did virtually, resoundingly, of which a lot of you participated, resoundingly people wanted more bike trails, albeit not really to get to their places of employment. There's a certain amount of folks that do that, but really more for recreation and healthy communities. So.
Thanks, Mike.
Okay, thank you. Do we have any public comment for this item or questions for Mike? We're gonna start with Zoom first, real quick, Mr. Chapman.
Mayor, I don't have any hands raised.
Okay, all right, Mr. Chapman, go right ahead.
Byron Chapman, 12 Ridges area, Madam Mayor, council members, city staff, and those watching. More and more, and rightfully so, we're pushing to do and buy more vehicles, even trucks now that are all electric. So I'm wondering, as that increases and gas tax and that sort of thing, it's extremely important in order to help with all of these projects. But as the electric comes on board and those people that are using the highways, but they're not putting anything into the kitty when it comes to that tax, is there a mechanism that is going to be put into place in order to, and just brainstorming, there were 3 or 4 I thought of right away. So at some point, if we are or not, I think Councilman Joyner is probably definitely going to answer that question for me. And the other one is, again, we're taking a snapshot of where we are right now. We know where we've been. We know where we are. You know, right now, you can't pretty much go anywhere. Somebody talks about high price the gas is. Gee, if you've been to the supermarket anytime, anywhere for the last 2 months, 3 months, it's amazing how quickly this stuff has gone up. So we're looking at inflation, which really covers all of these things: gas, food, medical care, that sort of thing. How is that going to be addressed so that the public can kind of look beyond where we are right now as to where we can get to, and maybe even where we were prior to the pandemic? So I know that this has been brought up before. I'm not sure how the public is going to perceive, you know, for a lot of folks, they go, well, okay, what's a half-cent tax? Just today alone on the internet, there was a list of states from the most expensive gas to the least, and California is right up there on top. So we do have a lot of issues that deal with that. And so, you know, people are in a few other states, they're screaming because their gas is $4.15. You know, that's our issues. But anyway, I wanted to bring those up just to make sure that either they're addressed or somebody's working on some way in which to tackle these. Thank you.
Thank you. Would you like to address that?
Certainly start it. Mike, if you want to jump in, it's there's already for better or worse, there's already been a pilot program, Byron, vehicle miles traveled tax in California. I think that is likely where we're all headed as the revenues from a gas tax diminish. My real challenge with that is for those of us who live in more rural areas, we're penalized because we have to drive farther than those who might be in an urban environment. I'll give you an example of that. If you're sitting in traffic in LA, you're on the road for over an hour, but you've only gone 5 miles. You're not paying as much as we are for getting down the hill in 20 minutes and having traveled 25 or 30 miles. So we've got to find a way to balance that out. Mike, did you want to?
I think you described it very well, Councilman Joyner. Yeah, there has to be a solution to replace the gas tax with another alternative because of what the gentleman just said. And there's a lot of bugs that they got to work out of that. So there's a California study. There's like 3 or 4 national studies that are being undertaken because at some point in the not too distant future, we will be mostly driving electric vehicles. Now, the speed at which that happens is a subject of fierce debate. Certainly the state would like those phased out, by 2035, 2040. the realistic picture is that it's going to take a long time for those vehicles to come out of the market. And so you would probably looking at like 2050, 2060 before that actually happens. So it gives us a little bit of time, but we certainly need to be working on that now. I just wanted to say that in some of the questions were asked about inflation is built into our projections. So we anticipate, we're not going to build all the projects in the first day. We'd love to, but the money comes when the sales tax comes. And so we plan in the future when that is needed and when those dollars will be available. And so we have to project out, well, what will it cost to widen this section of road, in 2030 or something like that. And so we build that all into that financial model. That's why when you see the math doesn't exactly add up. And the reason it doesn't add up is because we have to look at future dollars. So I think that answers all the questions.
Any other public comments?
Mayor, we did have a hand raised on Zoom. Lena, please go ahead.
Good evening, council. I was just wondering if I understood you correctly, that phase one could begin before a sales tax is voted on? And if so, have you projected when that might happen? Thank you.
I wish that was the answer was yes. It's not. No, we cannot build that first phase of this Highway 65 widening without a sales tax measure. That project is about $22 million. And so we just simply do not have that funding around. We were able to build the first, we were able to build the first phase of the interchange that was completed in 2019, but we can't complete any other phases of that project, nor can we widen Highway 65 until we have a source of matching funds to match those state and federal funds. So
I think what you heard, Lena, is that the project is shovel ready. As soon as funding is in place, they can go. And I think you can, rather than waiting for that revenue to come in, you can bond against the tax revenue.
yeah, because we're so far behind, there is money set aside to borrow to build a good chunk of the interchange, a good chunk of the widening immediately, because again, we've been at this since 2016. And so we're way behind. So by the time we get to 2024, we're going to be 8 years behind. And probably by the time you build a project, you get it built, it's going to be 10 years behind. So we're getting a bunch of projects ready to go so that when, the funding becomes available, we'll be able to put, shovels in the ground right away.
Any other comments in the council chambers? Okay, thank you, Mike. We really appreciate it very much.
Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you. Okay, item 6B. This was continued from last time. So this is the annual mosquito and vector control update, and we have a video for that.
Officer at the Placer Mosquito and Vector Control District. I'm joined here by Jill Bettner, our district manager, and today we're going to be giving you our annual update for 2022. First, we want to remind you that this week it's California's Mosquito Awareness Week, and also a reminder to protect yourself and your family and your community from West Nile virus and vector transmitted diseases by dumping and draining standing water on your property, using an EPA registered repellent that contains ingredients like DEET or picaridin, and also calling us, your local district, for any concerns you might have with mosquitoes or other vectors.
Let's get started by revisiting a little bit about our district. Placer Mosquito is an independent, non-enterprise special district in Northern California, governed by California Mosquito and Vector Control Law and a 7-member board of trustees. We have 24 full-time employees, and we hire annual seasonal employees during West Nile virus season. Our district's mission is to effectively and efficiently manage the risks from vectors and vector-borne disease in order to protect public health and quality of life in Placer County. Our district service area is all of Placer County, from Roseville to the Tahoe Basin. In West Placer, residents experience mosquitoes most, and we detect West Nile virus annually. In Mid Placer, mosquitoes are still active, but ticks are more present, and we detect Lyme disease in about 2% of ticks. In East Placer, although we still deal with mosquitoes, we encounter more yellow jacket nuisance problems, and we assist the California Department of Public Health with rodent surveillance and control as needed. Our operations as a district all follow integrated vector management, which is a science-based decision-making tool. Our activities include vector and disease surveillance, where we test for mosquito and tick-borne diseases at our lab, chemical control, biological and physical control like our mosquito fish program, community outreach, which I oversee, technology, and innovation like our drone program and applied research. Our responsibility as a district is to monitor vectors and diseases in our county, communicate the risk from those vectors and diseases to the public, manage mosquito populations using integrated vector management tools, and make treatment decisions based on sound science. We also lean on the Placer County public to assist us. We ask the public to prevent mosquito bites by using an EPA-registered repellent and protective clothing, maintain properties by minimizing standing water, and contact the district to report mosquito problems. Now I'm going to hand it over to Joel, who will provide a more detailed explanation of the mosquito outlook for 2022.
Aedes aegypti is an invasive mosquito that was found in Fresno in 2013 and in the Los Angeles area in 2015. This mosquito has quickly spread throughout the San Joaquin and Sacramento valleys over the following years. In 2019, Aedes aegypti was detected in Placer County in one neighborhood along the Sacramento County line. We implemented our invasive mosquito response plan and did not detect them again. However, since 2020, Aedes aegypti has spread to many of our surrounding counties and as far north as Redding. While we were successful in eradicating a small infestation in 2019, the experience of our colleagues in surrounding counties suggests that when we find them again, we will be facing the need to manage these new mosquitoes on a longer-term basis. This year, we'll be increasing our efforts to detect invasive Aedes aegypti in Placer County. And in some areas, we may be reaching out to the public to report abnormal day-biting mosquito activity. So stay tuned to district information in our monthly e-blasts, websites, and social media. This year in West Placer, we anticipate a typical amount of West Nile activity. The top graph shows the abundance of our two most important West Nile vectors in Placer County. The red line represents Culex tarsalis, which is most abundant in agricultural areas and urban areas close to rice fields. The purple line represents Culex pipiens, which tend to prefer urban areas and are common in stormwater catch basins, unmaintained swimming pools, and ornamental ponds. Depending on the weather, we can see West Nile virus mosquito activity as early as late June and peaking around mid-August. The bottom graph shows the number of West Nile virus positive mosquito samples in the past, which tend to track mosquito abundance. These data are used to assess risk and make preventative and responsive mosquito control decisions throughout the mosquito season. West Nile virus activity in mosquitoes tends to end around late September or early October due to cooler nighttime temperatures and shorter day length. In addition to the West Nile virus carrying mosquitoes, other mosquito species that bite people but do not transmit disease are active in Placer County. We call these species nuisance mosquitoes. The top three nuisance mosquitoes for 2022 are Anopheles freeborni, Aedes melanimum, and Aedes vexans. The graph below shows the abundance of each of these species by week for each year, going back to 2018. The brown line shows small peaks of Anopheles freeborni in February. These are overwintering female Anopheles waking up because of some warm weather. This normally happens in urban areas near rice fields. Later in the year, we see larger peaks of Anopheles freeborni after they leave the agricultural areas and seek overwintering areas in vegetation around buildings or other sheltered locations. The green line represents Aedes melanimum, which is a floodwater mosquito, meaning they lay their eggs in moist soil, which then hatch when the area is flooded. Irrigated pastures are a common source of Aedes melanimum. Close neighbors to a field where these mosquitoes emerge can experience very high numbers of mosquitoes for several days or weeks. The gray line represents 80s Vexans, which only tend to appear sporadically in shaded vegetated areas that are flooded, typically in the spring and fall. Nuisance mosquitoes tend to occur at specific times and places throughout the year. If you are experiencing increased mosquito biting activity, please let us know by submitting a problem report on our website. The mosquito outlook for 2022 across all of Placer County are that drought conditions are persisting like they have in the last several years. So we don't really expect any change in West Nile activity, but we do expect to see lower amounts of tree hole and snowmelt mosquitoes due to the dry spring. Water conservation practices that may be enacted due to the drought also prevent mosquito habitat and reduce West Nile virus risk. So conserve water. We'll continue to look for invasive Aedes aegypti and take measures to keep them from spreading. We'll also work to improve our preventative larvicide applications in West Placer and East Placer by using our unmanned aircraft to target mosquito larvae habitats. And finally, we're always working to improve our tools and techniques to reduce nuisance mosquito biting, lower West Nile risk, and manage insecticide resistance. So stay tuned to hear about more of our applied research and other efforts to continue to better serve Placer County and keep our public safe.
Thank you for joining us for our annual mosquito update for Placer County. For more information about our district and our activities, visit placermosquito.org. You can follow us on social media at Placer Mosquito. And if you have any questions, please feel free to give our district a call. Thank you.
All right, thank you, staff, for getting that working this time. All right, any questions or comments from council? Any comments from the public, either on Zoom or in the council chambers?
I don't have any hands raised. I
No?
don't see
Okay.
any in chambers.
All right, good job. All right, moving on to item 8, public comment on non-agenda items. So if anybody has a public comment on items that are not on the agenda, anybody on Zoom?
There, no hands are raised.
Okay, Mr. Chapman?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Just a quick question. At the last city council meeting on the, I think it was the 24th, I'd asked a question regarding the Oak Tree fund balance, and I haven't received a call or a memo or anything to the effect. And my question back then, which is still now in the 468 account for the Oak Tree Mitigation Fund, I'd like to know how much the balance is in that fund, just to figure out what's there and whatever monies have come in. And I think the question that I had also at the last time was if the city had, being in partnership with Placer County, also had anything, but I believe that answer was no at that time. So thank you.
Sean, can you circle back with Mr. Chapman on that? Great, thank you, I appreciate that. Okay, any other public comments, non-agenda item? Okay, all right, so we'll move on to item 8, consent. All matters on the consent agenda are considered routine business and will be enacted by one motion. There will be no separate discussion on these items unless a member of the city council or resident requests a specific item to be removed from the consent agenda for separate action. Any items removed will be considered after the remainder of the consent agenda. So staff has already pulled item 8B off of this evening's agenda due to an administrative error. The date is incorrect. So that'll come back later. And staff has also pulled item 8R off the consent agenda and will give a staff report once we take action on the consent agenda. All right, and I'm going to also pull item 8H, just because I would like a short explanation for the public on that. Does anybody want to pull another item?
Yeah, I'd like to pull 8J and 8O. But, and 8Q, but I don't have actual questions. I mostly just want like for 8J, I just think it's important that the public knows it,
Yeah,
right? Instead of just being snuck away.
That's good.
And then 8O, kind of the same thing, since this council has spent so much time over the last few years talking about our problems out at that wastewater plant so that there's like public comment that, you know,
Yeah.
we're moving on it. And then so maybe,
Okay,
maybe just like a brief staff report.
Sure.
And then we can take a look at it.
okay. Any other ones?
I have a comment on 8E. I don't want to pull it.
I'm saying like, can we take comments and then vote on the
Sure,
consent agenda? Because I
sure.
don't think I actually want to
Sure.
hold
Okay.
them.
So what's your
Vote
comment on
it.
8Q?
So for 8Q, I just wanted to, since it's agenda, I just wanted to take the opportunity. I know I've talked to Chief about it. In my experience, it feels like traffic. And I'm just excited that we might be doing this because I just feel like there are some hot spots in town that didn't seem like they used to be hot spots. And so I just kind of wanted to double check. It feels like something that should be a priority. And I've chatted with Chief before and he didn't not confirm that, yeah, things are maybe moving a little.
We probably really need something like this.
Thanks, Gwen. You didn't have your mic on. She
Oh.
moved.
Sorry. Never been accused of being quiet before though, so hopefully people heard me.
Thanks. Okay. And then you had a comment on.
Yeah, just 80 is committee assignments. I note two things. One is we don't actually have a seat on LAFCO at this point in time,
No, we don't. Yeah.
but we do show
Oh,
a member of the council filling that seat. And neither here nor there, just, and then the other is that we also show the airport committee, which in the last administration kind of got blown up and deactivated. I'd love to see that come back. Since we're reaffirming that it exists, I think that's a conversation we ought to be having.
okay.
That's it.
Great. Thank you. Okay. So can I have a motion to approve the consent agenda with the exception of 8H and 8R?
So moved.
Did we have J and O?
No,
as
those were the
well?
ones that were
All
mostly
right.
just like, hey, they're happening, like.
Oh,
call 'em out.
that's right. You wanted, okay.
Well, that really was my only comment. I just didn't want it to be hidden. Oh, do you have a comment on it?
Yeah.
Then we'll pull those.
So,
And you didn't go to
so 8J and 8O, you're right, you're right.
And we didn't go to the public for,
Let's
any
do that. So we'll move.
requested.
Okay.
Oh. Let's go to the public to see if they want to pull one before I make a motion.
Does anybody from the public want to remove an item?
Fair enough.
Oh, Mr. Chapman, go ahead. Okay. G and I? Okay. All right.
So I move to make a motion to move the consent agenda without 8G, 8H, 8I, 8J, and 8O.
Second.
Okay, roll call, please.
Yes, Councilmember Silhai,
Yes.
Councilmember Joyner,
Yes.
Councilmember Carlskit,
Yes.
Councilmember Lauritsen,
Yes.
and Mayor Andriotta.
Yes. Okay, let's start at the top. We'll start with 8G. Adopt Resolution 2022-136, initiating the fiscal year 2022-23 Landscape and Lighting District Number 1 proceedings, and adopt Resolution 2022-137, declaring the intention to levy and collect assessments and setting June 28, 2022 as the date for the public hearing. Mr. Chapman, what was your question on that?
Madam Mayor, a couple of things. First of all, as I read through a lot of the information that we have here, a couple of things I'm just not clear on or even really have come across before. The one question is when the city's looking at the benefit zones for various locations, on every one of those, there's a statement there, and I'm just trying to figure out why this particular item is worded the way it is, or even the substance in it. The CIP increased based upon the consumer index for San Francisco Bay Area all urban consumers. Now, apparently that was used in 2004, 2005. In fact, if I read one place, I think it even went back longer than that. When I think of the Bay Area and in the cost, if I were to take the same business or same home or whatever it might be, and build that out in San Francisco as to where we are here, there's a bit of a difference. I don't know, at one point, maybe that was I have no clue as to why it was selected. Maybe that was the only source they had. I'm not sure. So looking at that, I'd like to get some sort of answer to that. And also apparently there are zones which the residents are already paying their particular tax on that. And the key point I want to make there is the fact that it is a tax, because when you read this, it really says assessment. Assessment is a tax.
Well, sure.
Yeah.
It's a synonym.
But you'd be surprised how many people they don't put that together. They're like, oh, okay, the city is going to do this. Another city might do it differently. You would be surprised how many people look at something, and if it looks like a duck, walks like a duck, you're not calling it a duck. And I think it's just important to get that out there, because having that information and knowing that does indeed, I want to say, makes people pay a little bit more attention, because now it's going into their pocketbook. And apparently there are several zones where they were under the first one district, and now there are several that aren't. So maybe a little bit of clarification on that, because I'm not quite sure why that happens the way that happens. So
Okay.
thank you.
Thank you. Travis, would you like to answer those questions?
Yeah,
Thank you.
as far as the consumer cost index, as he alluded to, it is the most appropriate and most regional one. The city has historically gone between two of them, either the San Francisco or the 20 cities, in an effort to standardize between all our different rates and CFDs and PFEs and everything. One of my initiatives is to apply the San Francisco uniformly to all rates within the city. It's very consistent with surrounding agencies and other jurisdictions. As far as the question on taxes versus levy, they are, as he said, levied against all properties within the landscape and lighting districts.
I think the other question was, some people were in one district and now they're in another one. Is that what, was that your question?
Predominantly, that would only be if they migrated from landscape and lighting district. I think it was 31 and 32. Some of the late comers, instead, we got them out of that and into CFD 2018-1. So we got them out of the landscape and lighting district, and instead they annexed into the 2018-1 maintenance district.
Go ahead.
Travis, your discussion about validly about what inflation index we use, you're saying going forward, we have stabilized on the Bay Area. You can't go back and change any of the zones that were previously set up if they were set up for San Francisco, which the newer ones were fine. But I think some of the older ones had, first of all, some had the original had no inflation, which was a really stupid way to go. And some of the other ones, I think, had fixed inflation rates, and then it changed. So there's several different inflation rates depending on what zone you're talking about. A zone has in its definition the assessment and the inflation rate.
Correct. And in this case,
you just want to standardize everything in the future beyond, I'm taking it beyond just the landscaping and lighting zones too, that our standard inflation index will be the Bay Area.
and to clarify, no Prop 218 study was performed at this point. So we're not changing any of those guiding policies on the landscape and lighting districts. The San Francisco inflationary, that was written in originally,
Right,
and it
right.
is. That was more of a general statement going forward as we have the opportunity to update different policy documents. We're trying to standardize around that one.
Okay, thank you. Any
Thank
other
you.
comments or questions on this? Anybody from the public?
No hands are raised.
Okay, I'll take a motion to approve HE.
Second.
Roll call, please.
Councilmember Silhai,
Yes.
Councilmember Joyner,
Yes.
Councilmember Carl Skint,
Yes.
Councilmember Lortson,
Yes.
and Mayor Andriana.
Yes. Okay, item 8H, adopt resolution 2022-138, approving the Lakeview Farms Joint Community Facilities Agreement, which approves the agreement and authorizes the city manager to execute agreement with Placer County on behalf of the city of Lincoln. I asked for this one. I just want a brief report on this.
Sure, no problem.
Thanks.
So I'll give you a little bit of history as it's been recited to me by Travis. Many years ago, the city of Lincoln was involved in some litigation related to flooding downstream in Sutter County. And one of the agreed upon settlement components of that was a commitment to build a retention. Is it detention or retention? I always get those mixed up.
This case, it is a retention facility that functions as, or it will as a detention.
Okay, so for those at home, think of retention and detention in terms of stormwater as if you are detained, you will be staying there, and if you are retained, you may get released into the creek and get to go back with all your other water buddies. So the city's been in the process of sort of teeing this project up for some time. The basin is sized so that we've actually been able to sell some of that capacity to adjacent projects, which helps obviously with the cost. In fact, as a matter of fact, Nita and I took in a payment just a couple hours ago from representatives of Bickford Ranch for $511,000 to go towards the construction of this project. And part of that was that Bickford had to commit with Placer County to form a CFD in their subdivision or subdivisions to help with the ongoing maintenance of this facility once it's fully constructed and up and running. And so it's appropriate. They're paying their fair share. And from staff's perspective, it's a good partnership because without it, we would be bearing that cost ourselves. So.
Okay, thanks. So, so this is located in the Bickford area. I was just wondering, like Lakeview Farms. No, where is?
No.
Out to the west.
Yeah.
Okay, I'm just trying to get a picture in my head. What we're
Yeah,
talking
Travis, can you general vicinity?
West on Nelson of
Oh.
65.
Oh,
up
gotcha.
By all the duck hunting clubs.
Oh, okay.
We could describe it.
Okay. Thank you. Just trying to get a picture in my head of where we're talking about. Okay, wonderful. Thank you. Okay, any other questions or comments? Just me trying to get it straight. Anybody from the public? No? Okay. I'll take a motion to approve 8H, please.
Move approval of item 8H.
Second.
Okay, roll call.
Councilmember Joyner,
Yes.
Councilmember Silhai,
Yes.
Councilmember Carl Skint,
Yeah.
Councilmember Lortson,
Yes.
and Mayor Andriana.
Yes. Okay, item 8I, adopt resolution 2022-139, approving an initial payment and adopting an amortization schedule for the interfund loan between PFE Solid Waste, non-operations, and PFE Drainage, and approving an initial payment and adopting an amortization schedule for the interfund loan between Transportation PFE and PFE Drainage. Mr. Chapman, what was your question on that?
Once again, thank you, Madam Mayor, council members. As I went through the packet, first thing that kept coming across my mind is not so long ago, unfortunately, the city was involved in a state audit. And there was indeed an issue about interdepartment funding. And as I looked at the background information for that item, literally right under the background and / introduction, about halfway down, it looks like that at the end of a 10-year term, apparently this has happened twice, I believe, outstanding principal balance of $1,010,000. Apparently, every time this has been put into place, for whatever reasons, the payback loan amount wasn't obtainable. So two things. One, what do we learn from the audit that happened with the state of California in interdepartment fund loans? And two, how do we avoid this time around where the other two got to the point where they said, no, we can't make the payment or we can't do that. So we have to come back to a 10-year agreement. And third and lastly, when that happens, how many real dollars is that costing the taxpayers in order to try to make this work? I don't know what the answer to that question is. So thank you very much.
Rita, would you like to respond to that?
Yes, thank you very much. So I just wanted to state that this is actually addressing one of the items in the JLAC audit, one of the outstanding interfund loans that didn't have, or actually two of the outstanding interfund loans that don't have amortization schedules. So this item is correcting that issue and ensuring that these two loans will be paid off by the end of their current term. We're not extending their current term. Yes, they were initially adopted and then extended. But we're not extending that term. This payment schedule will pay off the loans by the end of that term. So we will be bringing forward, after this, we do have two remaining outstanding interfund loans that will be corrected this coming fiscal year 22-23, which will resolve that issue in the JLAC audit.
Great, thank you. All right, any other questions or comments from the public on that? Any comments or questions from council?
Mayor, just to clear one, Mr. Chapman's last question up, the question was about what it costs the taxpayers. And the answer to that question is $0 because these are PFE dollars which are collected through development. And so one of the things that's really complicated is PFEs come in cycles. And so it makes it very difficult until you have built up fund balances to budget for those payments. But we just happen to be in a position to get that done.
Thank you for that. Okay, make a motion to approve 8I, please.
Motion to adopt resolution 2022-139.
Okay, roll call, please.
Yes, Councilmember Joyner,
Yes.
Councilmember Silhai,
Yes.
Councilmember Carlskent,
Yes.
Councilmember Lauritsen,
Here.
and Mayor Andriana.
Yes. Okay, item 8J, adopt resolution 2022-140, authorizing city staff to approve the 2022 Independence Day fireworks show scheduled for July 4th, 2022, and funded by the Lincoln 4th of July Foundation, as well as Lincoln Potter's funded fireworks display being requested for the following dates: 6/18/22, 7/2/22, 7/16/22, and 7/30/22. All shows will use Pyro Spectaculars North, Inc. to provide pyrotechnic services.
Before I ask my question, can I clarify if that was a yes or a no vote? Was that
It was a
yes or-
here, which goes down as an abstain. I was going to go there too. I didn't want you to
Either.
lose your vote.
Oh, okay.
Oh, okay.
I wasn't sure if you
Sorry, I
were
didn't-
intending to want to stay off or not, so I wanted to give you the chance to make sure that your vote was.
It was an eye.
Okay, thank you. Just wanted to make sure
Yeah,
that we're
thank you.
like not putting words in your mouth. All right, I don't need it. I'm very supportive. I just think that this time of year, it's gonna start popping up on Facebook. Everyone wants to know what's happening and wanted to make sure that it didn't just get buried in the consent file, that we're moving right along with it. So maybe just like a quick, real 30-second, this is what's happening, what we're proposing.
Sure. It's pretty cool. The Potters are going to do fireworks on 6/18, 7/2, 7/16, and 7/30. Actually,
Great, though.
The neighbors don't think it's all that cool.
no, I know. And in all transparency, I will share that a little outside of our authority, we gave the Potters the go-ahead to do fireworks on their opening night just because it's their opening night. And of course they would do that. But we want to make sure that it's done in accordance with how we normally do it. And it's what I'm hearing from the Potters is that it's been a really great start to their season and really good numbers so far. And people seem to be really excited. And this is a big part of that culture. And so we want to be as supportive of it as we can be.
I'm super excited about the community benefit of the fireworks of the Potters, but you skipped the part that everyone in town wants to know about, which is the Independence Day fireworks show scheduled for the 4th.
I apologize. Yeah. So
I love that you're enthusiastic about baseball, though.
I am really excited about, I do care about the 4th of July as well. So I've been working pretty closely with the 4th of July committee. I think this year, what they would tell you is that it's been a challenging year for probably a variety of reasons to fundraise. I've figured out a way within the confines of my budget to help a little bit with not any kind of direct payment for the fireworks, but some additional assistance with some porta potties and some other things that are hard costs for them that are a little bit difficult, that are relatively minor, which they seem to appreciate quite a bit. And then probably everybody at this point has heard that they were able to get PG&E to cover traffic control for them, which is about a $20,000 hit.
It's huge. It's huge.
So it's looking all very positive, and I guess I would just say that if you're so inclined, please donate because it sounds like they need it. But-
I think last year they were able to raise what we needed and it was quite a lot and they paid all the bills, the foundation paid all the bills. But this year, I think coming, on the downhill from COVID and with inflation and with everything happening, it's been a lot harder. You would have thought last summer would have been hard. It's harder this summer. But I do want to thank Doug for all your work with the foundation too, and for Sean for working with them so closely and getting it done. It's much, much appreciated. It's going to be a good day. It'll be great. Yeah.
I mean, I know that we've talked about it all the time, but this is one of like the keystones, I feel like, of like
Mhm.
Lincoln community. It's something that we look forward to. It's something that is like, kind of makes us who we are, having these little hometown celebrations. And so I appreciate you really trying to make it work. And I also appreciate, another reason I wanted to pull it is we haven't always worked super cooperatively over the last couple of years. And I think that that's something that's important to do. This is our, it's our community to make sure that it stays the way that it is. That's one of the reasons why we're here. And so I appreciate you working towards that.
Would it be okay? I didn't include one thing. Chief reminded me. There's a major change this year that the council should just be aware of generally in community to how we're going to stage the parade compared to how it's always been done. And so, Chief, do you want to maybe just explain a little bit about the different direction?
Sure. So historically, for as long as I can remember, vehicles were always staged on the the north-south streets, which was a heavy impact to the neighborhoods. And I'm not sure how they felt about it, but just with the traffic flows and the breaks that we were seeing, we're trying something very different this year that we're hoping is going to work. So essentially, what we've been doing for the last couple of years is closing down McBean Park at the end of the McBean Park Drive at the end of the parade from D Street up to East Avenue. And what we're going to do this year is we're going to close McBean from East Avenue to Lincoln Boulevard. And then that entire stretch will be staging, aiming east, and then they'll filter onto A Street and then join into the parade route will be the same, but staging is going to be all on McBean. And space-wise, it should be plenty of space. We'll be able to put them on both sides of the roadway, and there's going to be staffers up and down the entire roadway to arrange and get everybody going. But just trying something very different this year to see if this is going to help with the logistics of getting people in and out and just having some good flow for the parade. So it will be notable and very obvious. So wanted you to have a heads up on that.
That's great.
I appreciate.
No, I think that's great. I did have one question about that though. Where does Fifth Street come in? Is the parade coming through Fifth Street, or is it going to be normal like all the vendors and stuff like the VFW auxiliary, the women's auxiliary, the women's club? They kind of do things. There was a little concern that they might be blocked off. So I'm trying to visualize what you're saying here.
Yeah, keep talking 1 second. So that's not it. 1 second. So the parade route, so it's the staging on McBean, then they're going to turn onto A Street, then turn down Fifth Street, and then north on F, and then back east on Sixth Street.
Okay, so people could line Fifth Street like they normally do
Yes.
to watch, and then the vendors. Okay, that's great. That's
Right.
perfect.
And what we're also going to be doing this year is putting out some more psychological barriers. So not bike rack barricades, but more ropes and delineators to try to keep the crowds back towards the sidewalks so they don't impede like they have in the last couple of years and making it very narrow for these long trailers to get through, especially on the turn there at F Street and Sixth.
May I have a comment real quick?
Yeah.
One of the things that I really appreciate about that, and I'm glad that you brought it up, is like we've talked about before, Lincoln is much bigger than it was back when you were probably remembering the parade, right, as a kid. And it's something that we want to hold on to. And I think it takes, hopefully it works, but even if it doesn't, it's going to take some creative solutions to continue to hold on to our traditions and not make it like prohibitive.
Yeah,
So-
not saying it's going to work. I don't know why it wouldn't, but we'd
Hopefully,
be
yeah.
negligent if we didn't try.
Well, we'll never know unless we try,
Agreed.
right? Dan, go ahead.
I was disappointed this got pulled because I was thinking ahead of time that after 6 years now, we were going to make it to the 4th of July without having
A discussion
a
about.
5-hour discussion on the council on whether we're going to do it, whether they're going to have the money.
It hasn't been 5
What?
hours. It's only been
Yeah.
5 minutes. So
Yeah.
you're hilarious.
So it's a really positive to have that on the consent.
Yes, yes. We're not arguing about it. We're celebrating. There you go. Okay, any questions or comments from the public on this item?
No hands.
Okay, great. So I'll take a motion to approve item 8J.
Second,
Roll call?
Yes, Councilmember Silhai,
Yes.
Councilmember Carlskent,
yes.
Councilmember Joyner,
Yes.
Councilmember Lauritsen,
Yes.
and Mayor Andriotta.
Yes, thank you, Bill. That was great. All right. Okay, item 8O, adopt resolution 2022-146, authorizing the city manager or designee to execute the aeration project funding agreement with Placer County, which will result in the payment of $2,652,245 from the county to the city for the Lincoln Regional Wastewater Treatment Reclamation Facility aeration project, including the maturation pond lining.
Yeah, and I really don't have any questions on this at all. It's just we have, prior to you are arriving here, we've had multiple workshops. We've like sounded alarms. We've gotten people all worked up. This is a good thing and just wanted a quick update so people know that.
It is. I think Councilmember Carlson would tell you that we're in a really good place currently with the county and collaborating. And I think them putting $3 million of their ARPA dollars into our project says a lot. They're not, to be clear, they're not required to pay more than their proportionate 27% share. So this is a way that they sort of extended an olive branch and also just a helping hand to get this project done because it's a key component to our current treatment process and will be important when the plant upgrades. So.
Sean, this amount, does that include what was back owed or is that separate? That includes it?
This amount, to be super clear about this, this amount is identified for the aeration project. And the way that the city funds capital projects at the wastewater plant, we have two funds, right? We have 720, that's operations. We have 721, which is capital projects. It's super common in wastewater funds that in years where operations needs help, capital infuses money into that fund and vice versa, more likely vice versa, where operations has a good year and can afford to fund a capital project. So this fund will be booked into 721 as a capital project. And the practical effect of that is that we will not have to use funds that we would otherwise have transferred from 720 operations.
Right. Any other questions or comments from the council? From the public?
No hands, Mayor. No.
Okay. All right, I'll receive a motion to adopt item 8O.
I move approval.
Roll call?
Yes, Councilmember Carlskent,
Yes.
Councilmember Joyner,
Yes.
Councilmember Lauritsen,
Yes.
Councilmember Silhai,
Yes.
and Mayor Andriotta.
Yes. Okay, and lastly, this is the item that staff pulled, 8R, adopt resolution 2022-149, allowing the city manager to execute a contract for construction with PBM Construction, Inc. in the amount of $1,697,451 for the Aiken Park Phase 3 project. 461, authorize the city engineer to approve change orders not to exceed $169,745 and authorize the city manager to execute a task order with Coastland Civil Engineering in the amount not to exceed $108,750 for construction management and inspection services with Blackburn Consulting in the amount not to exceed $8,132 for the material testing services.
Thank you, Mayor.
You're welcome.
So I'm just going to explain something real briefly here, and then I'm going to kick it over to Travis to explain what the project is now and why we're here. But one unintended benefit from the city council pausing this project a couple meetings back was that, as you might recall, the project was really expensive. And as such, it required that if to just do the basic things, parking lot, bathrooms, some minor amenities, we had to lose a really important part of the project, which was the soccer field component. And some people in the community correctly kind of pointed out, hey, it's not really much of a park if you don't have at least some sports facilities. And so it gave us the ability to go back and really look a little bit more closely, which is, I'm really glad it just so happened that way. And we're going to try to incorporate that into normal practice moving forward. But basically what happened was we went back and looked at the funding strategy with the intent of trying to figure out if there was a way we could cut other portions of the project to make the soccer field work. And what we actually ended up finding was that the Sorrento bond is, when you read the language in the bond document, it is restrictive in terms of what specifically it can and can't be used for. And it's very clear in there that a recreational facility like a soccer field does not qualify under the Sorrento bond. Now, these days, would we write it in such a way? Probably not. It's overly restrictive, but nonetheless, it's what we have to live with. So then we had a new problem, which is, we don't have enough funding maybe to pull off this project at all. And then we thought a little bit more closely about other resources that we have available to get the project done. And the Park PFE fund is an appropriate use for the soccer field component of the project. In that Doug, he's gone. Doug would tell you if he was still here, is that soccer fields are like one of the most rented and sought after amenity that we have in Lincoln. We're pretty much always booked, especially in sports season. So adding to our network of soccer fields can be seen as a regional improvement because certainly people will come from all over the community and outside of it to use it. So that's how we've packaged together the funding strategy to get the park done generally as designed. There are certain components Travis can talk about that just simply don't pencil as a result of the construction climate. And then the other component that I think we just need to be straight up about is when this project was developed, it was envisioned as a multiple phase park, but it wasn't financed as a multiple phase park. And so it's almost kind of like they planned this 6 or 7 part park and really only financed 2 or 3 parts of it. And so it's just a good lesson learned. The park will still be beautiful. It's still, we'll go into construction as soon as possible, but it is a good lesson to learn as we move forward with new projects. And maybe you want to just chat a little bit about what's in and what's out?
Yeah, I appreciate that, Sean. As Sean was saying, half of this was going to be going over the financing. I think Sean cleared that up. As far as the scope of the project, we pulled up a plan sheet. Glenn, if you can put this on the screen. So the project was bid as a base bid, which is 800 and some thousand. That includes the parking lot and some associated sidewalks. If we can go to the next slide, I've got it. So the base bid shown here in green, so that's going to be your parking lot, 20 some stalls. And then importantly, the ADA accessible stalls, the pathway, the connection to the existing hardscape out there at Aitken. So I know there was some discussion on deleting the parking lot, but there are some facilities there that are necessary to support the restroom and soccer field, the other facilities. So we'll be moving forward with your approval with the base bid. Then bid alternates 2 and 3. So the soccer field area, which is about the size of one tournament size field, or it could support multiple youth games at once. And then the shade sails, alt 3. Out there, we have a current tot lot and we've got a concrete area. We'll be installing 4 large shade sails over those to make nice picnic areas and some sheltered areas. Then lastly, added alternate 1, which is a prefab restroom, similar to what we've utilized in a lot of our other parks, bringing restroom facilities to it. And lastly, there is alt 5 that we can move forward with. It's pretty affordable. It's a special needs children sort of an interactive wall that we're going to add next to the top hut. So.
And one last little component I think is pretty important is we received some comments from the public about this. This park has been long discussed. And one of the concerns that I think is legit is this, the question was, what does this do to your park PFE if you're going to be funding a significant portion of this project out of that? And the answer to that question is that the park PFE fund, if you're assuming the budget is approved in 2 weeks, the fund balance for that fund is roughly $10.4 million. So there's still a good amount of money in there, and we're continuing to collect with every new project that comes in so that we can move forward with other regional opportunities, you know, whether it be Jimenez or any of the parks in 12 bridges that are currently planned. And as long as those parks have, it will depend on whether the funding is needed, but as long as those parks have some sort of regional amenity, I think that there's a strong case for council to consider that as well.
Okay. All right. Any questions or comments from the council?
I want to thank Sean for doing that because I got the question about the.
Okay. Any questions or comments from the public?
Mayor, no hands are raised.
Okay. Yeah. Thank you guys for bringing it back, for cleaning it up, and for the great presentation. And that community is going to be very, very happy. And we're going to be very happy. So,
Yeah, thank you for getting that
Yes.
done. That's been a
Yes.
top priority for those residents for as
Yes.
long as I've been on council.
huge.
It has indeed.
Yeah. Right. Okay. I'll take a motion to approve 8R.
You made the motion? I'll second the motion.
No, I said I'll take a motion.
I'll make a motion to approve 8R.
Second.
Roll call.
I'm sorry, who made the motion? Councilmember Joyner
Yeah.
and Councilmember Silhai,
Yes.
Councilmember Carlskent,
Yes.
Councilmember Lauritsen,
Yes.
and Mayor Andriotta.
Yes. Okay. Ooh, that was a long consent agenda. All right, item number 9, public hearings. Looks like we have 3 tonight. 9A, conduct a public hearing and adopt resolution 2022-150, approving the annual adjustment of the Placer Conservation Program's fiscal year 2022-2023 development fees. And our city attorney, Ms. Mollenkopf, will give the staff report on that.
Thank you, Mayor and Council. This should be a relatively straightforward issue. The formation documents for the Placer County Conservation Program provide for an adjustment by CPI to the fees that are charged on an annual basis. And so the proposed change this year would be for the 2022-2023 year, a 3.43% increase from the fees adopted by the city based on the Trends in Agricultural Land and Lease Values Index. The Special Habitats fee schedule also is going to be increasing by about 4.52% from the fees previously adopted by the city and county for last fiscal year. On March 30th of this year, the PCA, on which Councilmember Carlskent is a member, voted to recommend the annual inflation adjustment for approval to the Board of Supervisors. It then went to the Board of Supervisors on April 19, 2022, where they adopted it. And so now, because we are the only other member of this Joint Powers Authority, it is incumbent upon this council to make a similar finding so that our fee collection can be consistent with both the county and for easier processing by the authority. If you have any questions, I would be happy to try to answer them.
All right, thank you, Ms. Mollenkopf. Any questions, comments from the council? Okay. I don't have any questions either. Any comments or questions from the public?
So this is a public
Oh,
hearing.
I'm sorry.
The hearing.
I knew that. Open the public testimony. Any public testimony on this item?
Mayor, I don't see any hands raised on Zoom nor
Nope.
in chambers.
Okay, I'll close the public hearing. and bring it back to the council. And if there's no other comments or questions, then I'll entertain a motion to adopt resolution 2022-150.
So moved.
Second?
Okay, roll call, please.
Councilmember Carlskin,
Yes.
Councilmember Joyner,
Yes.
Councilmember Lauritsen,
Yes.
Councilmember Silhai,
Yes.
and Mayor Andriana.
Yes. Gosh, I do it every single time. All right. Item 9B, conduct public hearing on the annual update of Benefit Assessment District 1, adopt resolution 2022-151, approving the final engineer's report, and adopt resolution 2022-152, ordering the levy and collection of assessments within Benefit Assessment District Number 1 for fiscal year 2022-2023. And so that's you, Travis. Thank you.
Thank you, Mayor, Council. As you guys are aware, the city conducts a two-step council meeting process every year to approve the engineer's report, order the levy and the collection of the assessment for the ensuing fiscal year for Benefit Assessment District 1. In order to meet the Placer County deadline of June 30th, we're bringing this forward tonight, and we will look to come forward June 28th with the next action. Benefit Assessment District Number 1 is comprised of 4 zones. They correspond to Lincoln Crossing, Aiken Ranch, Cresley Grove, and Lincoln Highlands. The district provides funding and maintenance and capital improvement projects related to flood control and storm drain facilities that benefit the districts. To keep up with inflationary cost increases, the maximum assessment rate for the districts are authorized to increase annually February to February for the San Francisco Bay Area Consumer Price Index. The allowable increase for this year is 5.19. City staff proposes levying the maximum rate for fiscal year 22 and 23. That will generate a total income of $84,112. The first step for the process is initiating the proceedings, ordering and approving the engineer's report, setting the public hearing date. That occurred on May 24th with the adoption of resolution 2022-9495. So this evening, city staff is recommending the city council conduct a public hearing and adopt the 2 attached resolutions approving the final engineer's report and authorize the annual levy of district assessments for fiscal year 2022 and 23.
Okay, thank you, Travis. Any questions or comments from the council? I have neither. Okay, I'll open public testimony. Any comments, Mr. Chapman?
Thank you, Madam Mayor, council members. In the first page of the packet for 9B, down the last paragraph, it shows, I want to say on the following page, it shows that there's been an increase of 5.19% for the fiscal year 22-23. I couldn't find anywhere, and maybe I just wasn't looking in the right spot, but I couldn't determine or find out what the prior percentage was, if any, and what the original percentage was when this went into being. And my reason for that is to try to figure out what is the cost and how it either is increasing or is it staying the same, and or why it's changing. So in the back of my head too, we're probably looking, hopefully not, but we're probably looking at other areas that just the whole inflation issue is going to become an issue all by itself. So I was just concerned about what the prior tax was, what it was from the beginning. Kind of gives us a better picture of what was, what's happened, and what maybe tomorrow is going to look like. Thank you.
Yeah, Mayor, for this one, I believe we've got Ed online. I'd actually defer to him. Espinoza, they have assisted with the bad assessments over the past prior years.
Good evening, City Council. Can you guys hear me?
Yes, thank you.
Oh, good evening, City Council, members of the public. So to answer Mr. Chapman's question, the BAD was formed with a CPI escalator authorized. So the maximum assessment increases every year by the All Urban Consumers San Francisco Bay Area Index, as published by the Bureau of Labor and Statistics. As to the history of that index and the increases, I believe last year for fiscal year 21-22. The increase was 1.57%. Historically, with last 10 years prior, on average, it was about 3% annual increase. With that being said, as we're all aware, we're kind of in unprecedented, times when it comes to inflation and all that kind of thing. So it's very hard to predict what is in store for us in the future. The only thing I can say is that there is a maximum. We're capped by that index, and we are never authorized to go above that. So whatever that index tells us, that is the maximum. With that being said, every year we bring forth the annual engineer's report with a budget, and at city staff's discretion and city council's discretion, the city can always elect to assess below the maximum rate if the budget for the ensuing fiscal year deems it appropriate. So hopefully that addresses Mr. Chapman's questions, but I'd be more than happy to add any follow-up if there are any other questions from council or Mr. Chapman.
Great, thank you. I really appreciate that. Okay. Is there any other public testimony on this item? Okay, all right. I'll close the public hearing, bring it back to council. If there's no other comments or questions, then I'll take a motion to approve 9B.
Motion to approve 9B.
Second.
Okay, roll call, please.
Yes, Councilmember Joyner,
Yes.
Councilmember Silhai.
Yes.
Councilmember Carl Skint.
Yes.
Councilmember Lauritsen.
Yes.
And Mayor Andriana.
Yes. Is it possible to take the park slide off? We're still stuck on that. I don't know if that was a problem or we just, okay, thanks. All right, item 9C, conduct public hearing and waive full reading and introduced by title only ordinance 1046B, amending section 13.04.360 to the Lincoln Municipal Code establishing source water connection charges. And this is you, Travis, again. Thank you. Travis will give us a staff report.
Thank you. As you guys are aware, the city purchases water from PCWA. In this case, we do have two different methodologies of purchasing. Some is for regulated and some is for unregulated. Regulated serves the majority of the city. That goes through our tanks. We provide the storage, the distribution. Unregulated is for the high zones, more on the Verdera side of things. That is direct from PCWA to the end user. What we're looking to move forward with tonight is update the ordinance, section 13.04.360. In summary, we currently have rates that were adopted based on a 2019 study, the Lincoln Nexus study, that have specific rates for both regulated and unregulated. For regulated, we propose moving forward instead of the specific rate, which every year we'll need to adopt the escalated rate. We propose amending the ordinance and reference the Nexus study. That will allow us every year to apply, or every escalation period, to apply it directly without having to come back and update the ordinance. In addition to that, for the unregulated capacity, we have ran out of pre-purchase capacity. So moving forward, instead of recovering the costs that we've already expended for connection capacity, we will just be a pass-through. So residents will be able to connect using the PCWA adopted rates.
Okay. Thank you for that. Any questions or comments from the council? Okay. Bill, any questions or comments?
No.
Great. I have no news, so I'll open the public hearing and ask if there's any comments from the public, either on Zoom or in the chambers.
So none on Zoom
Okay.
or in chambers.
Close the public hearing, bring it back to the council, and if there's no other comment, then I'll take a motion to approve 9C.
So moved.
Second.
Roll call, please.
Yes, Councilmember Silhai.
Yes.
Councilmember Lauritsen.
Yes.
Councilmember Joyner.
Yes.
Councilmember Carl Skint. And Mayor Andriana.
Yes. Okay, easy peasy. Item 10, general business. conduct a workshop and receive and review business license tax rate structure and provide direction to staff. And our finance director, Nita Racker, will give the staff report. Thank you so much, Nita.
And Mayor and Council, as they're getting that pulled up, what I'll mention for Nita as sort of a lead-in is that this came up under sort of a initial look that Nita was having about just how we do business licenses and what's efficient and inefficient about it. And then it sort of snowballed into a more thoughtful discussion about whether or not how we assess business licenses makes sense or not.
Good evening. So that's about the size of it. I've been reviewing our business license practices, as I'm sure the council is aware that it's been a longstanding complaint from the business members in our community that it takes too long to get a business license from the city, that the process is cumbersome and it is difficult. And so I've been seeking ways to streamline that and bring efficiency. And as we started looking at the process, I began reviewing the ordinance and the fees that we charge. And our fees are based on a flat structure. Just a little history. This ordinance was originally adopted 48 years ago. That's not to say that our fees are 48 years old. We do update the fees when we update the master fee schedule, but the majority of our original ordinance from 1974 is intact. We've made some minor changes in a couple different ordinances, but the classifications, the language is all from 1974. So I'm going to say it's stale and really needs to be updated. When we look at our flat fee structure, it's really a limited structure and it puts at disadvantages for our smaller businesses. Based on our narrow classifications and this flat rate structure, for example, a small business, a restaurant like Simple Pleasures will pay the same fee as Target does. I don't think that makes sense to anybody, but they both fall into that commercial business of $94. So even though we currently allow business licenses to be submitted online and fees can be paid online, the process is still cumbersome. If there's any question, if there's any error in the way the application is submitted, if the fee is incomplete, if additional information is needed, the application can be stalled in finance's office. And so we're looking to rectify those issues. But as part of that, we're also trying to figure out better ways that we can shorten our turnaround time and make this process just more equitable to our businesses. So we wanted to bring forward some changes for the council to consider. One of the things we really like to consider is changing or expanding our categories. We have very few limited narrow categories, again, with that flat fee structure. By expanding those categories and better defining them, it gives us an opportunity to charge fees in different ways. And this is more in line with what our neighbors do. It's more common with the standard practices of today. The other thing that, again, as I said, that we could offer different, if we have these different categories, we can come up with different structures based on the different categories. So for example, we may want to go with a graduated fee structure for, say, like retail service based in food businesses based on revenues. Perhaps we want a tiered fee structure for contractors and a different tiered fee structure for professionals, so that we're charging fees more in line with the effort involved in actually processing an application for this business and the impact that the business has to the city. And in terms of streamlining, we're looking for a way to get a better interface for our customers to provide a perhaps in some instances, almost an instantaneous license for businesses that don't require zoning or planning review. And one of those ways would be to engage a third-party vendor to help us develop that platform and make it more of an automated process, where the applications would be submitted online or even submitted over the phone. That is the end of my very brief presentation.
Thank you, Nita. Can you go back really quickly? No, I wanted to see your last, your last slide.
Thank you. Like,
Mhm.
the options. That back on.
This one or the forward?
No, the very last,
There, right there.
there you go. The last bullet point, define business license exemptions. What would be an exemption?
So for example, some cities may exempt charitable organizations.
Gotcha.
They may exempt religious institutions. It's really up to this council's pleasure to determine what types of businesses might be exempt from having to get a license. Right now, our exemptions are, it's kind of vague. It does specify that the city manager can waive the business license fee, but that puts a lot on Sean's shoulders, and it also can leave a bit of inequity where we may have businesses, for example, I'll hear this from some of our departments. We have a business that doesn't operate in the city, and the only reason they're getting a business license with us is because they're wanting to be a vendor of the city, and we should waive that business license fee. Well, I don't agree with that. I agree that they should be charged the business license fee the same as our businesses within the city limits. And I think that's a question that shouldn't ever come to Sean from our departments or from our outside businesses. But if we give a better definition of the types of businesses that we would give an exemption to, put it in our ordinance, then that answers that question and the question stops being asked.
Good, thank you. Okay. Any questions or comments? Sorry.
Yeah.
Keep that last slide up just so we have like the list of considerations.
Yes.
Or go to the slide before that.
You want to go to the first slide?
No, because I can,
But can we pull it up so we can look at it?
Yeah.
The first side?
that one.
Yeah, takes a second.
First of all, I agree that our system is totally inequitable. It is ridiculous that a mom and pop operation pays the same business license as a big box store or a department store. I have felt that for a long time, and I felt we have lost a source of revenue by not being being aware of that. What I can't understand, to be honest with you, and I'd like you to explain a little bit, is if you have a schedule that has 11 items on it, or 15 businesses, flat fee, how that becomes a cumbersome process. Why are we having the cost and the time, cost and resources and time to generate business licenses? If you understand those two things, you got a process that's, or a schedule that is so simple, it's inequitable. You got a process that is so cumbersome that it's erroneous.
Yeah, so Nita, I think I can handle this one. So here's the thing about a business license. It's a city attorney years and years ago told me, don't think of it as a license. It's not a license. It's really a revenue generation tool for the city. And that's how it is in every community. The reason people come get a business license for the most part is so that they can open a business account because banks require them. It's almost the entire reason why anyone comes. In fact, it's very hard to know who keeps them up and who doesn't, unless you actually go out and check to make sure businesses are still running. But to more specifically answer your question, there's two reasons. One is, at least in my experience and kind of seeing how we do things here, we generally have a pretty old school kind of method for coming in, submitting a paper document. That paper document for a few different reasons starts with finance. It then gets routed up to planning typically. And so having a uniform timeline doesn't work for a bunch of reasons, which is that sometimes it's a brand new business, right? And so when a business license comes in, sometimes that triggers our thought, oops, you know what, they need to have an occupancy inspection, or oops, they also need a sign permit, so they should come in and apply for that. So sometimes that's what happened. Other times, frankly, it has to do with business licenses going up to a department that has generally been pretty inundated. But a lot of it is am I still right about this, Nita? Like for a really long time, people literally were taking the paper upstairs, right? And it comes back down after some period of time, after it's been routed around, and then it's approved. So it's still physical.
We're still doing that. That's correct.
Yeah. And we don't do that in so many other areas of what we do. And so Nita had checked with HDL, who serve Roseville in this exact capacity. And maybe you could share a little bit about what they told you.
Yeah, so Roseville, they not only offer business license services to Roseville, but to several of our other neighboring cities and throughout the state of California. And they've developed a platform that basically launches off the city's website, where someone would go to our website and click the business license button that would take you then to HDL's portal, but it still looks like you're on the City of Lincoln's portal, where you could submit an application, you could pay your fees. If you were simply renewing, that you could do that at that portal. A simple renewal would result in an instantly a license being issued. Sorry about that. People would continue to be able to pay online, either through HDL's portal or the city's existing portal. And it would we could set parameters even for new businesses on when an approval by planning and zoning was needed, as opposed to when, again, that instantaneous approval could occur. So we're really looking hard at that option and hope to be able to bring something back to council. But as part of that process, it really got us thinking about the different fees that we have right now and the limited categories that we have. So we're very excited about the possibility of finding a vendor that is dedicated to this process, because we know that it'll speed things up simply because they're the experts in it. They have I'll say a branch of their company dedicated just to this. They commit to not only that online business portal, but as well, they will send out renewals 45 days in advance. If a business doesn't renewal, they do 2 follow-up emails and 2 follow-up phone calls. So they're on top of making sure the renewals happen. They'll do research of the city's businesses to determine which businesses are in the city and don't have an active license, to capture those businesses as well, where we don't have the resources to do that. So we're really excited about that possibility.
I presented that way. I am too. I assume that we can parameterize the system such that we put our needs caused by ordinances. This kind of a business needs this, and this, so that when they pull up the application, check that they're that kind of business, they are then either warned or routed to the right place.
That's correct.
All you do that one time and then it happens automatically.
I may.
I mean,
Hold on, did you have okay, go ahead.
I was going to say thank you for that, because I was going to ask, like, why can't we, as opposed to moving from like, the pigeon delivery system to like maybe going to fax and somehow getting to the 20th century at some point, why can't we do ministerial approval for business licenses? I mean, we can do it for things that are way more complex than that. Some of it's even mandated by state law. So that excites me. But what doesn't excite me is ministerially approving based off of our current structure. So I appreciate you bringing this forward. And I had a question: why is the residential permit more than a commercial permit? Like,
You mean the home occupancy?
the home occupancy? Like, why are my like micro kitchens or my moms that are making soap paying more than Target?
So while I don't work in the CDD department, I can tell you, with working from my peers upstairs, or on the second floor, that they would say that type of a business requires more work in an inspection and zoning consideration. So if you can think that you've got your micro kitchen in your home, is your home zoned for that? Do they have to come do an inspection to ensure that you've got the proper implements for the type of business? Are you going to cause a noise issue? Is there going to be excessive vehicle traffic at your home? So it requires more work than, say, a commercial brick and mortar that's in a commercial area.
That makes sense. I'd like to do whatever we can to make it the least burdensome on those individuals, though.
I
By
think
having more categories
Yes.
inherently.
It
solve
should.
that,
Yep. Yep.
Because it's a type based on the type of home business. And
So like here's an example from days when I used to review those kinds of things all the time. Like you might get a business license for bookkeeping, and the person does it out of their home. They have a little home office. That's fine, and no one in the neighborhood will care. But if you don't ask the follow-up question, which is, do you have employees? And turns out they bring 6 or 7 people over to their place every day to do a sophisticated bookkeeping operation, then the neighbors probably do care, right? So there's a way we could build through this portal the correct questions that,
Route them through.
somebody would ask in community development. And if the answer is yes, no, and in some ways it's better because we can probably even figure out a way to pre-populate, a little disclaimer statement that states like, what you've said is what we're evaluating your application on, therefore here it's approved and, we'll be checking in on you in a year or whatever. So I think it just might make life a lot easier. And that's not to say there won't be unusual ones, but
What I also like, what I also like about that is that in the last several years I've been here, sometimes the optics of it being non-standardized, whether to your point, right, each different business type is going to have different considerations and different touch points and different needs. But having some sort of standardized system, I think makes it feel like it's equitable because I've received some concerns from business owners wondering like, why am I being picked on and why is it so expensive just for me, but it wasn't for that. And so I think that also solves some of those relational issues and just makes it flat playing field across the board.
No, well, maybe. I think you're absolutely on the right track, and thank you so much for bringing this forward. It's needed to be done for a very, very long time, obviously. It's 1974 is when I graduated from high school. So you weren't born yet. Wonderful. So let me throw out a hypothetical just so I can try to track this through. Let's assume for a moment that a plumber from Folsom comes over to do a hot water heater replacement. If they do it right, they need to pull a permit with the city to do that hot water heater replacement. Often they don't tell us they're even in the neighborhood. Would they also need a business license to apply for that permit?
Yes.
And can
they
we
would.
do that instantly so that they can?
Yeah, so with the HDO portal, they could either do it through the website or there would even be an 800 number that they can call during normal business hours to do a business license through the phone. And, with a graduated or a separate schedule, we could also consider something like a one-day business license, either for special events or for limited use. So for example, your plumber's coming in to do a favor for a friend. He's only in Lincoln for the one day. He needs to pull a permit because his buddy's selling his house. And so he also needs a business license, but doesn't want to pay a year's worth or even a quarter's worth because he's here for one job.
Or a food truck, perhaps.
Right.
And the contractor thing is a really good point because that one happens all the time. And especially if it's the plumber example you gave, you have to figure that if they try to do things legally, which, we appreciate, they're passing that business license cost on, or they should be, to the customer, which, doesn't seem fair based on those tiered rates you have there. It seems super expensive for what's mostly minor stuff. Yep.
Hey, is there any public comment on this item?
Mayor, no hands are raised.
Okay, Mr. Chapman.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Quick question, probably easy to answer. What's the cost to the city in order to streamline this and do this? And did I hear that there would be another company that would be involved in that, or did I miss on that?
So we're still evaluating the fees of a contract with HDL. And since we're reviewing the fee structure, or should council direct staff, we would be reviewing the fee structure. That was something to be considered in that fee structure to determine if that additional fee could be absorbed into the business license, which would then have no cost to the populace in general, but only cost to those people pulling that business license.
Any other public comment online? Okay. Thank you very much for that. I'm very excited about this, and thank you for bringing it forward and for taking initiative to fix problems that need to be fixed. And so thank you very much for that.
Thank you.
I have one more question or just
Sure.
like thought to,
Yeah, go ahead.
that just hit me. We had a big old discussion on business licenses and types with that served alcohol adjacent to their business, but not as a main function of their business. Would those considerations be included in this general overhaul?
Falls under the.
That's conditional use.
That's conditional use permit. Was that completely separate? That's what I was wondering. Are they linked at all, or are they completely
Well,
separate when we're going through?
You can't get one without the other, but the CUP comes first, and then once that's approved, they get a business license.
Would that be its own like category of business though, when we're going through for
Oh,
licenses?
I think that if
Like,
the
or
list
does
is
it not matter?
the list is exhaustive enough, there will need to be triggers in there. Like, so say, for example, somebody rented a tenant space that used to be a retail place, and they decide they want to put a bar in there. Well, if they just don't know any better, they might just come in and say, hey, can I have a business license? I'm opening a bar down the street. And we would say, well, before you do that, you probably need to call ABC. And also, here's the zoning code about whether or not you need a use permit in this location. And so the system will also kind of create, I think, opportunities for us to just say, okay, time out.
That
Give
was
us a
my
call.
question, like where does
Let's
the
meet with you.
intersection happen on that for someone who's wanting to come and establish versus like, if there's not a live person now that they're,
Yeah.
you know?
Well, I think like, so the goal here is 85% of the business licenses we process are just a matter of fact routine. Like very little, if no review required. It's only that 10 to 15% that might require a little bit of, designing.
Routing
within
or
the
And
system.
those would be directed to the planning and development.
Okay,
department
so it would
for-
just be,
yeah. So, it wouldn't be completely 100% approval
Automated.
online.
Okay.
For anything that, as we said, has a new business with a zoning or a change of business that requires additional review, that HDL would then take that application and route it to either, a specific person or persons within planning and development for their review and approval. Then it would go back to HDL for HDL to issue the license once it's been approved.
You're looking for direction, I think you're getting it. I did have a question. Doing your research, I'm sure you looked at our sister cities and their business license categories, methodologies, and so on. I think that is a part of we want to not follow them, but not be totally out of line. So, it's like labor classes. I mean, you need to be cognizant of that when you start coming up with these 14,000 different business licenses.
Councilmember Carlson, are you kind of saying that we want to be in the pocket, but we're not following suit?
Correct.
Okay, got it. Yep.
But that is one of
It
the.
can't be ignored.
Right. And that is one of the bigger complaints that I receive both through code enforcement at the city attorney's office, that why is it this over in Roseville, but it's this in Rockland, and yet I have to go through this whole other process in Lincoln. So I think this is a really great way to make it easier for our businesses that do business in the region and not just in the city.
And of course, we won't be developing this revised language or these fees in a vacuum, that we were working with CDD as well as the other departments in the city that are impacted by business licenses.
Well, thank you. We look forward to you bringing it back when you guys get that all put together. Thank you very, very much.
And it's got to be cheaper than the way we're doing it now.
It'll definitely be faster.
More efficient. All right,
Push
thank you, Nita. Okay, item number 11, council initiated business. Do any of my colleagues have any business?
No, ma'am.
Okay, how about information items? I have one that I just wanted to share with you. Last week, or June 3rd through the 7th, I took my last student trip to the East Coast. We went to Philadelphia, Gettysburg, and DC. And while I was in DC, our tour guide took us to some place where I have never been before. He took us to the National Law Enforcement Officers Memorial. And it's a beautiful thing. And so I looked up Officer Shellbach, and I found him on the stone and on the memorial, and I took a picture of his name and then some of the memorial. So, I mean, just thought it was kind of cool. And I really appreciated the opportunity to be there at that memorial. And I found him, and it was kind of a cool moment.
Yeah.
So
I did etching. of
I
that
didn't have a
as well.
pencil with
That's
me.
cool.
I didn't have a pencil, so I couldn't do the etching, but I took pictures.
There's a little box, several of them around the way that should have pencils and paper
Yeah,
for just that.
I didn't see him. I looked, I saw the book and all that, but
It is very cool.
yeah, but anyway, so I just wanted to share that it was kind of a cool moment.
Very
so,
cool.
Yeah.
I have one. Oh, go ahead.
I'll just share this real quickly, and I just wanted to make you all aware, there's a vote coming up at SACOG Thursday on a memorandum of understanding between SACOG and a ballot measure coming forward, I believe within Sacramento County, that will provide Sacramento County with revenue to build infrastructure. And I'm very, very supportive of all of us being able to build the infrastructure we need to build and funding it however we can come up with. The challenge is that I believe 26 of the projects on their list are outside of the currently approved blueprint, which keeps us within the 19% greenhouse gas reduction requirement that we're facing. So there is a very real possibility that if this gets approved, and it's a citizens initiative, so it doesn't need 2/3, it only needs 50% plus one. And government can't influence the way that was set up. It is possible that the entire 6-county region could be at risk of not meeting that greenhouse gas reduction standard, and therefore not being able to receive funding, even if a revenue measure passes here, because we won't be compliant. So it's a huge conversation to be had. What's being requested is that the board allow the director to negotiate and to sign this MOU without it coming back to the board. And that's a timing issue. They waited to the last minute. This has to be approved by the end of June. And so this is troubling. I wanted to make you all aware of it. I don't know that we have the strength to stop it, but I'm certainly going to raise some real questions about it.
Thank you for that
you. I
report
appreciate
out.
that.
Helpful.
Mayor, if you wouldn't mind, we do have one thing, and Travis is going to mention about our Joyner Fieldstone roundabout.
Yeah, I appreciate it if I can just have a second. I know a lot of you guys have had questions or been approached by the public. I just want to let you know that next Wednesday, we're looking at energizing the signal and opening the Joyner Fieldstone, the roundabout, the access to 12 bridges, all of that. So we'll be working with our public outreach team. There will be a lot of notifications going out, but I did want to let you guys know tonight.
Thank you very much.
I'm very excited for
So
that.
just one observation, the temporary signal light on 12 bridges may be the tallest signal light I've ever seen in my life. You kind of have to lean over and look up to see it.
That one may or may not be our final version. That's a temporary while we procure final material.
It was the best we could get on short notice.
Informational item. So on behalf of the Sacramento Valley Division Board, I just want to make sure in case you're not reading your Cal Cities updates from Charles, there is a general membership meeting for our division. It's going to be in South Tahoe. It's July 8th. There is a room block. There are no more nights available in that room block for that Friday. There are nights for the Thursday. The membership meeting is at 1:30 in the afternoon. And it has a pretty good agenda. So check it out, register in advance. I'd encourage you to attend.
Okay, July 8th, you said? Okay. All right, if there's nothing else, we are adjourned. Thank you, everybody.